Welcome to this beautiful day, beginning of the weekend for all of us. I am grateful to have this conversation with you this morning to encourage women your age that change is good, right? Change is good.
It's uncomfortable, but it's good.
But it's good. My name is Marilyn Ehrhardt. I help women 30 and above that are stuck in their job and do not know what to do next, or that they have a job that is unfulfilling and taking the time that is so precious to them to do the things that really matter to them. I'm today here with Caroline Neira. She was born in Colombia, raised in Miami, and now in New York City. She has recently taken a job offer as a bilingual family therapist with the New York Founding. So, Caro, you remember where we met about 7 years ago in the Sofitel when you were getting your master's degree, right? It seems yesterday when that happened. Can you tell us what ignited you to go in that direction of getting your master's?
So I guess to talk a little bit about how I ended up getting my master's in social work, I would have to go back to when I got my bachelor's. I also got my bachelor's in social work, and what I kind of stumbled into social work. I had no idea it was a career in itself. I just knew that after I became a Christian, I wanted to help people, whether it was through the only idea I had was mission work. So I was doing my associates in Miami-Dade College. I was failing my psychology classes, and a very kind psychology professor asked me to meet him in his office so he can help me work through my failing grade. And so we meet, and he asks me, "What do you want to do with a psychology degree?" And I told him, "I want to help people. I want to be a missionary." And him, not being a Christian, said, "Well, I think you should look into social work. Social work sounds more like what you're looking for." And I was like, that's when kind of I was introduced to social work. And at that point, I was applying to Trinity International University in Florida for a psychology degree. I quickly, after that conversation with him, I stopped my registration with Trinity International University, and he had suggested to look into the program in FIU. So I quickly looked into that program. I still had enough time to apply. I applied. I was able to get into FIU and the School of Social Work. And that's kind of where my path in social work began. 2 years later, loved the classes. I was excited to go to class. I couldn't believe that there was such a degree out there. Had challenging internship, not because I didn't like the internship in itself, but because I realized that I didn't know how to handle my empathy, and I was working with the elderly, and I wanted to take them all home with me. I was like, I need to bring them home because that's the only, I need to take care of you in my house. So I was having a hard time with that, but I just still knew that what my desire was to help people. And so fast forward, graduating with my bachelor's, I decided to take some time off I took a year off before I started my master's to work and kind of think about what I wanted to do. And I had people in my life who were pointing me to getting a master's degree. And because of my grades as in the bachelor's program, and also because my mom works at Florida International University, I was getting a really good financial package to get my master's with very little debt. And so it just felt like the wise thing to do. So I jumped into it, and that's around the time when we met, because that was 2015. 2016 was when I started my master's. And so, yeah, went through the process of my master's, and that's when I think I had the most challenge with my career, just because it was very challenging. I think it was just a very challenging master's, in the sense that I was a lot older now, and or not a lot older, but I had a job, I had an internship, and I had to manage school. And so it just felt like it was a lot to juggle. I was also very involved in my in the church, and I wanted to have time to do that as well. And I felt like it was just a lot to juggle. And that's around the time when we met. And I remember so clearly you telling me that school is not so much about what you're getting the degree on, it's the endurance that this process is building in me. And so, yeah, I can say a lot more about, I don't know if you want me to continue to share about my master's, but that's kind of how I stumbled into social work.
Exactly. But I think that I would love to hear how you got your first job, and how you decided to change in a radical way, which include moving to New York City with that change. What ignited that in you, and and help you say, okay, I'm stuck here. It's not longer a fit for me, and I need a change. And then you had the courage to make that change. What happened there?
So I get my master's. I did an internship through my master's, and this internship was in a community agency. I was a therapist for adolescents who were struggling with substance use. I did that for about a year and a couple months, and realized that that wasn't my thing. I didn't like I love working with children and adolescents, but I realized that I didn't want to work for that agency, and I didn't want to be doing substance use with adolescents. So through my master's program, I've always had this, with social work, there's this theory that's called systems theory. And systems theory, basically, the premise is that an individual is not floating by itself in society. Like, there's like layers to an individual, not only internal, like physical, mental, spiritual, but external, like this individual has a family, this individual has a job, this individual it has a faith community, or is in a specific culture, and all of that affects that individual. And so with that in mind, I was like, I would love to work for the school system, because the school system would put me in a system where I'm not only working with the student, but I'm working with the parents, I'm working with the community, I'm working with the teachers, and it just felt like it was a good place. And so thankfully, I won't get into many details, but I kind of like, the Lord just like opens doors in awesome ways. And so he opened a door in a school very close to my home. It was an alternative school where kids who were it was at-risk youth who was getting, they would get expelled from their regular school and would come to our school for like a period of time. So I start there 2019, the beginning of the school year, and I am loving it. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is my dream job. I'm going to retire here because this is amazing. Fast forward fast forward to the pandemic. So March 2020, the world shuts down, including the school system in a way. And so we are no longer able to be in the office, which was what I loved. I loved being like face to face with the students. We had started a garden initiative where I was working towards getting a horticultural like therapy degree so that I can work with the kids in the garden and like use that as a therapeutic modality. All that fell through because COVID happened and we moved to working from home. I'm trying to hunt down students who are truant. They don't want to log into their computers. Rightly so, like who wants to do class online? And so it was around that time that it was like honestly really sad because I had come to the school with all these dreams and desires, and then circumstances happened which kind of like derailed my plans. And so come this March 2020, we're approaching, in a couple months would be like the summer. And so that was kind of a turning point for me. I had to decide whether I wanted to continue in the school system. And I'm pretty sure that this was the case with a lot of maybe of the listeners, that during COVID, we had a lot of time to think and reflect and maybe even think crazy things. And so one of my crazy thoughts was like, well, now it's the time to move. Like I had always wanted to move out of Miami, and that thought came back around that time. I thought, well, let me explore missions. Let me explore moving to another state. And I remember visiting my sister here in New York City and telling her like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? And she very kindly said, I think you've always wanted to move out of Miami. New York City has a lot of opportunities to grow as a social worker, and our home is open if you do want to come and try this out. And so that kind of encouraged that thought. And so this was June 2020. I started telling a couple people. Everyone was like, you're crazy. Like New York is the worst place to be right now. And so me having like feeling the need to have validation from like my parents and other people, it was a really challenging thing because I knew that this is kind of what I wanted to do, but people who I loved and cared about and valued their opinion were saying like, no, don't do that. So here I am also just like, is this even a good idea? But I decided I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to approach applying for jobs here in Miami and applying for jobs in New York City. And so that's what I did. I started applying for jobs here in New York City in higher education as an advisor or a mentor for students in college. I got rejected for like, I want to say like 50 jobs. I would get like, no, we already went with another candidate. And so then that at one point I told myself, maybe this is clear that I shouldn't be going in this direction. And so let me try something else. So I switched my resume around and started applying in other agents, like social service agencies. Miami wasn't giving me much. I wasn't interested in the job openings that were available in Miami. And so then I continued to look into New York City. And one random day, I want to say this was around July. I don't know dates, but anyway, I get a random email from a recruiter saying, hey, I came across your resume in Indeed and you seem like a good match for this job. And she wrote, working with refugees. And that was like, I don't know, that opened my eyes. And a little background, I have a heart for the refugee population. And so when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, let me look more, let me look into this. Message her back. The following day, she's calling me, giving me all of this information. Her personality was like, I don't know, I think the Lord used this lady's personality and persistence and passion for this position. I know she's a recruiter, so that's her job. And then my need to kind of just like, this is it. And so that's the job that ended up bringing me all the way here to New York City. And
there was a match between that job and your gift and your passion for helping people. And that was the energy that pushed you to make that move to New York.
Yes. It was a mixture of just like pandemic and things falling up, kind of like falling through in Miami, and then this opportunity coming.
Yes.
Kind of out of nowhere, but yeah.
It's usually like that. It's usually out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. I remember I had similar experience in my career. When I was an NASA engineer, and I was very prideful of that job, and everybody was like, oh, wow, how can you be? You're the only woman there, and blah, blah, blah. But inside my heart, I felt like I am not in my lane. I love to see transformation. I love to see companies or people go from here to there and to leave an impact or a nugget that allow them to continue to grow. That was my gift all the time. And it was very interesting and similar to you. I get this offer out of nowhere to be a management consultant in Spain for Europe. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was a single mom. My son was only 4 years old. So here I am with this offer in front of me that clicked with my gift, but had a lot of challenges and a lot of fears. False evidence appearing real. So here you are in a new continent with new people. My mother, just like your parents, said, no, I'm not going and I'm not supporting you. And she was my support backbone. Mm. But I still made the decision to do that. And it was the best decision that I took in my career, because I learned there not only to use my gift, but I learned to help corporations transform their business using technology through 4 waves of technology in Europe. And when I came back to the United States, because of that learning and that experience, I became one of the top consultants for the US and Latin America in management consulting, which gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people around the world, to learn a lot, because to be a management consultant, you have to be learning all the time, because you have to be ahead of your clients all the time. And it built a foundation that actually was the core center as to why my career grew to the point that it grew. So those changes, although they're very risky and hard, it intimidates us. But a lot of the times they align with our gift and our passion. And in faith, we walk through those lanes and we make it happen. And we have similar stories, and it happens all the time like that. It is really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's something like in your experience and in mine, another similarity is that, and it's not something that we're looking for at the moment, but like when we make that decision to make this change afraid, we get to the other side and we see how us being Christians, we know that the Lord sustained us and provide open doors. And one of my biggest fears, like, will I be able to afford living in New York City? Will I be safe? Will I be okay in the transportation system? Will I find a church? All of those things were provided for me. And so thinking about that now, I think that piece is like good to remember in future endeavors, because it's like, I once did back in 2021, I made this big decision that was really scary. And here I am now, still alive and thriving. And it's empowering. I think that's what I want to say. Like, both of our stories had this, like, that big change that we took, character, build our resilience, and empowered us. And what you're doing now is wanting to share that with people so that they can also
Do it.
do things afraid and learn from that and grow from that.
Yes, it's like, this is why in Here2There, we always begin in your gift and your passion and what's in your heart, because that energy is the only thing you can count on, of course, through God, to overcome the challenges and how fearful it is to change. Change is not easy, but it's required for us to grow and move to where we belong, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, Caro, what are the top 3 advice that you would give to women your age? Top 3.
So as I was preparing for this, the 3 things that I jotted down is, first of all, and before anything, is like, put your faith in God. Any success that any like plan that we have would be a lot more manageable and a lot I don't want to say, it would be the sharks that come when we make that, like when we make whatever decision we make. The Lord would provide the wisdom, the courage, and the vision to overcome those sharks. And if you're wondering what we mean by sharks, I encourage you to ask Marilyn, because it's part of her Here2There program. So yes, I would say first and foremost, put your faith in God. The second thing is surround yourself with people who love you and care about you enough to push you out of your comfort zone. So there's going to be people that love and care about us, that perhaps their advice comes from a very close-minded point of view. Perhaps they have never really taken, or everyone's capacity is different. So we have to gauge where their advice is coming from. And so seeking out different opinions,
Yes.
and people who are truly seeking to know where you're at, asking good questions about why is it that you feel stuck, and that actually care to dig deeper with you and then support this decision to make a change, or make sometimes a drastic change. And then number 3, it's create a plan. Create a plan in faith. Going back to a little bit what I shared, I was stuck. I didn't know if New York was the thing. I didn't know if Miami was the thing. I looked at both and I said, I'm going to approach Miami and I'm going to approach New York City. I'm going to apply for jobs in Miami and I'm going to apply for jobs in New York City. So that was my plan. And it was going back to the first point, put your faith in God. I know that wherever, if a door closes, it's Him. If a door opens, it's Him. And so that gives me the peace to move into whatever direction I end up being gear, whatever direction I'm leaning towards. So so creating a plan and sticking to it, and then the other part is do the next thing. I learned that from a very well-known missionary. She already passed. Her name is Elizabeth Elliot, and she has this thing that she would tell herself and taught her daughter, when you're frazzled, when you're frustrated, when you don't know what to do, you just do the next thing. And the next thing could be either the next thing in your chore list or the next thing in your to-do list in working towards your plan. Sometimes things are going to feel scary, but if you have a place where you have your plan written out, you can go back to that as a way to ground yourself. And you look at what the next thing is. Is the next thing editing your resume? Do that. Is the next thing sending out your resume? Do that. And so looking at what is the next thing in your plan. And so, yeah, I would say that those are the top 3 advice that I would give to women my age.
For sure. I think that for me, again, of course, God created men and women in his image, and he's given us a lot of gift. And men and women are a perfect gift, a perfect fit. We complement one another in amazing ways. So one of the things that I always like to talk to women: do not focus on gender. Do not focus on the fact that you're a woman and perhaps you're a minority, as the culture pushes today, with all these diversity programs and things like that. Men and women complement one another very, very well if we are aligned with God's perfect fit. And in business is the same way when we complement one another. And I think that in a lot of times we are an Ezer, E-Z-E-R, is the word in the Bible that describes the woman. And a lot of people say, okay, a woman is the helper of the man, but without the woman, that's what that word means. Without a woman, the man is half of the story. So I say, do not ever hide your sharp edge. And when you're in situations at work, men and women complement each other in a perfect way. And when we do that, great things happen. So that's one of the things I always talk about. The next one is your gift and your vision, your passions need to be at the center stage of your career. We talked about that. Do not lose your cutting edge. Do not lose it. If you're a Christian, you're here to impact and you're here to be significant. And look at the examples. I tell women all the time, I said, look at the examples in the Bible. Ruth, the queen of trust, right? If you look at Rahab, the queen of protection. If you look at Deborah, the queen of leadership. If you look at Hannah, the queen of prayers. If you look at Esther, the queen of fight. If you look at Mary, the queen of faith and rejoice. The Bible is full of examples of women that have taken that road of courage to know that we're here to leave a significant impact to others. And when you take that road, you will always leave a significant impact to others. And some of the women in the Bible really change the world in so many ways. So that's one of the second one. And the third one that I will leave is focus, just like you said. Things do not happen in our life by magic. They happen in our life because we have a plan and we focus on that plan. And I talk to women all the time. I make a very simple example. If you want to go from Florida to Georgia, you may plan to drive 20 miles a day, and you may plan to get there by one day. But what happens a lot of the times with all the distractions that we have in the world is that one day we drive 20 miles, but the next day we feel exhausted and, oh, maybe I just do 5 because the following day I'm going to do 35 miles. And that's where things start falling down the mountain, in that it gets to a point where you say, well, but now I have to do 45 and that's too much. And you start slowing down until your vision is no longer doable for you. So focus on your plan, on your vision, just like you said, and do not get distracted. It's exactly what you were talking about, your experience with other Christians, and do the next thing on your resume, or do the next thing that you had in your plan. And in Here to There, we have the SMART goals and we have the anti goals, and we have to be very aware when the anti goals come in to go back to our goals. And we don't have to overdo our goals. We have to just do them, right? And not neglect them, because other distractions come our way. So I think that those are my three things. Women and men are a perfect fit. So when you're in a diversity environment, when you're in environments where you feel like because you're a woman, you cannot overcome the challenges in front of you, that's a lie from the enemy. And that's very important for us to keep in mind. Number two, to make sure that anything you do is aligned with your gift, because your gifts are precious. They're loaned to you by God. Do not die with the music in your heart. Don't do that, because that would be worthless for us. And the third thing is focus. Have a plan and focus. It's a day-to-day thing, but you will get to the other side. When it comes to the sharks in Here to There, we understand as women that there's a battlefield out there. And how do you navigate through that battlefield? How do you avoid the pitfalls? And we know that every step of the way, there's going to be a challenge coming to us, either trying to take us back to the future or stopping us from moving forward, paralyzing us. Mm-hmm. And we actually plan that. We see it, we experience it, we plan it, and we plan a battlefield attack against those things. And I think those are very important. So, Caro, could you tell us a little bit about how Here to There was helpful in your journey?
For sure. I think you've touched on some of those things, and we've mentioned sharks here and there. We had a meeting. We've met several times, but one of the key sessions that you and I had was when we were creating that Here to There plan for me to come to New York City. And so what was so helpful and continues to be helpful is keeping in mind the anti goals. And so I have these SMART goals. And I would say that maybe the sharks are the anti goals. Would you agree with that?
Yes, okay. For sure.
So I think jotting those down and thinking through how they can intervene with the journey, whether it is for me, a good example was one of my goals was to come to New York City and get my license in social work, my first license in social work. And so the sharks that came with that was procrastination, with procrastination comes lack of diligence and lack of planning. And so I faced that a lot. That's something that I knew was going to happen. And so I think when you write it down and you say, you acknowledge it for what it is, it kind of helps you deal with it better, rather than just saying or not even thinking about the fact that procrastination will be something that would hinder me from getting my license. And so because that was something that I went into this knowing that will intervene, I fought it. It was a hard fight, because studying, I rather socialize than to sit down and study. And so thankfully I found a really good program that the lady was realistic and said, you can't sit down for more than 90 minutes to study, because that's just your brain's capacity to retain information it's going to go out the window. And so I found that so helpful because it made it a lot more manageable and doable. Because before I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to study like 5 hours a day. And that's so unbearable. Like, I don't see myself doing that. So, yes, I would say that I derailed a little bit, but just to like highlight that expecting those sharks to attack as you're trying to get to the other side, it's so helpful. And
Indeed.
it kind of like prepares you for battle, because it is a battle. And so it's like, okay, if procrastination is going to come in the way, what tools? I'm like already ready to like
Yeah, exactly.
to fight it. If unhealthy relationships are going to come in the way, what people I'm going to have next to me to keep me accountable and help me and call me out when I'm falling into something that's not helpful. What was something else? Like feeling guilty. If I knew that guilt was going to hinder me from getting to the other side, like you and I have spoken a lot about that. And so you have been that key person in my life who has like highlighted this guilt doesn't belong to this place right now. Like, this is misplaced guilt. And so having a mentor or a therapist or a friend who keeps you accountable, it's part of that plan. Like, so you highlight the sharks that are going to like hinder you from getting to the other side, and what things and what tools will help you face those sharks when they come. And so to me, that's honestly been one of the most helpful things from the Here2There program. And then also, I've never been a planner. I've always been like afraid of failure. And so if I don't plan and I fail, I won't realize it. And so it's fine. But this, like working alongside Marilyn has it's put planning and failure into a different it's given me a different perspective from which to look at it. And so I can plan. I don't have to plan 5 years from now, but I can. And that plan doesn't have to happen just like I planned it. I kind of have to, I plan it knowing that there may be like different journeys that that will happen. And that's where like my faith in God comes in. It's like he determines my steps, you know? And so this like fear of failure has been something that like actually planning has helped me like challenge. Because if I fail, like, did I really fail? You know, at least I moved like 5 steps forward and failed.
Yes.
And so failure could be redirection, or failure can be character development.
Exactly.
Climbing the character ladder.
Yeah. Is the redefinition of failure in a different way, in a way that help you to continue to grow. I think that I am like, I'm very honored and grateful to God for having a Ruby like you in my life. I seen from the beginning you're a very loving and empathetic person. That's why you are in the field that you are. Your empathy for people is very deep. And you have taken all the time, you have taken courage to go out of the box and help people. I saw you when you went to Cuba so many times. You didn't know anything about Cuba. That was communist Cuba. You didn't know what was going to happen to you there. And you were so ready to go there and help the church. And you pour so much love into them. So that's your gift. And God is going to do amazing things with that gift within you, Caro. It's very precious. And I know that you just somebody very precious, very precious. And I'm so happy that God is taking you every step of the way to where He wants you to be, which is helping others and leaving a significant impact in their life. And when you grow older, you're going to see that significant impact that was not only you, is usually all the people around you. You know, it's like the redwood tree, that the roots are all interconnected, but the top is beautiful and strong because you have so many interconnection at the root level. All of our success is because other people have come around us. I can even count the number of people that have come around me, and you are the same way. So, but you will later on in life just say those nuggets of impact and significance is what really, really made life worth living. And you're on that lane, girl. I'm so happy for you. And I'm so happy for the gift that God has given me of meeting you.
Yes,
We planned for it. We had no idea. And it came together. The things of God come together without us planning or looking for them.
Yeah.
And they're awesome.
Yeah.
So anything you want to say for your last words, or?
No, just I always thank you for the questions you ask, and for your desire to like truly know a person, and now your platform, like the platform that you have to be able to like help us as women. And then I also always thank you thank God for your story, because it's what God has given you to share with the world, with us as women. And and so
Amen.
I'm very
Amen.
grateful for you.
Well, have a beautiful weekend full of fun, fellowship in New York City. I hear that it's still very cold.
Today is manageable. The sun is out.
I see that. Okay, sweetie. Many blessings. And we'll talk soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.